Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, The Basic Steps to Starting a Business. My name is Christopher Garcia, and I'm the Small Business Advisor or the Business Development Specialist at the SBDC at UNM Valencia campus. I want to welcome everybody today and thank you for spending some time with me. I hope we get a lot out of this webinar today. Before I start the webinar, I want to go over some webinar ground rules. Please don't use the chat function for anything other than technical questions. And I have the wonderful Leslie on the call. She's our webinar coordinator. Hi, Leslie. She'll be happy to answer those questions in the background, and I will also check them. If you have a question about the slides, please notice there are slide numbers at the bottom of the page, and you would want to write those questions in the Q&A. And then I'll answer them during the question and answer period. In fact, just to make sure everybody could use the Q&A, I want you to put a hi, hello, how are you, hola, ¿cómo estás, yatahe, whatever you want into the Q&A, and I will just make sure everybody's on the same page. Okay, let's see, I got a good morning, Thomas. Good morning, Jim. Hello, Anjali. Hello, Claire. And Claire is joining us all the way from Wisconsin. We're happy to have you, Claire. And hello, Rachel. Perfect. You guys are good. I don't think we're going to have any issues, Leslie. In addition to the Q&A, I also ask you to raise your hands during the presentation just to make sure everybody's on the same page. I see somebody right now has their hand raised, but I just want you to raise your hand for me. I like to see if everybody could hear, see, and if everything's going okay, just raise your hand for me. Perfect. I don't see any callers on the line. So if you have a question and you're calling in on your phone, I will be sure to open it up for questions at the end. Perfect. I appreciate all of your attentiveness. And hi, Ishmael. Let's dismiss that. In fact, I'm going to have you raise your hand on the next slide. So here's a graphic of our center locations throughout New Mexico, and the mission of the SBDC is to build skilled entrepreneurs and strong businesses by offering no-cost confidential business counseling and lower no-cost training events like this one. I'm going to tell you more about the SBDC in the next few slides, but I want you to notice the disclaimer by the SBA on the bottom. The SBA is the Small Business Administration, and they fund the small business development centers, but they are not the same entity. They also provide loan guarantees, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that later in the presentation. And I am going to turn this slide over to Leslie because she will update us about the latest training offerings we have going on.
I do want to update everyone because this month it's really exciting. We have like 35 webinars on all kinds of different topics. So today we're in basic steps to starting a business, which is a really great overview with, he's got lots of links and stuff like that. Also tomorrow we have cash is king, cash management for your small business. We also have a bilingual session on accessing financial resources. We have a session coming up later on this week. This is a short week too. The most important web stat for your business. And then in the beginning of next week, I have to check my notes. We have 5 basic steps to dissolve a partnership. Cash is King is going on again. That's a great time to ask any questions you might have. And then we have retailers, the most important web statistic bounce rate. So join us for any of those free webinars.
Thank you, Leslie. And yeah, the Cash is King is going to be a good one. It's Tommy Thompson, and he's a SCORE volunteer. And what SCORE is it's the Service Corps of Retired Executives. And he puts on a great cash flow webinar, really, really top notch. Here's the agenda for today's training. I'm going to tell you more about the Small Business Development Centers, talk to you about our pre and post surveys for the training, get into the basic steps, review and demonstrate our excellent research tools, then take questions. I'll also have you do a show of hands throughout the presentation. And in fact, I'd like to know how many of you are here from the Albuquerque metro area, so central New Mexico. Perfect. Okay. That's where I am. I'm actually located in Los Lunas, New Mexico. How about from northeast? So Clayton, Tucumcari. Nobody from the northeast. How about the northwest? So Farmington, San Juan. No norteños, as they say here in New Mexico. How about from the southeast? So we're thinking Hobbs, Lovington. Okay, I see one. And how about the southwest? So we're thinking Deming, Silver City, the Gila, if you're daring enough. Okay, most of us here are here from central New Mexico. Very good. One all the way from Wisconsin. Very good. Hope to see you in New Mexico soon. Now let's talk about the services of the SBDC. We offer two major services, confidential business counseling and low or no cost business trainings. There are no limits to how much no cost counseling you can receive, and we have centers throughout New Mexico to serve you. So there'll be one close to you. If you look at the graphic in the upper right-hand corner, it shows what we strive to do: renew, grow, launch, and start up small businesses. This slide shows what we expect from our clients. My fellow business advisors want you to succeed, so you'll be assigned homework or further research. We can't make decisions for you or offer tax or legal advice. We could only connect you to the information you need to make an educated decision. And part of making an educated decision is working with licensed professionals, like attorneys and accountants. And I'll give you some good advice for finding an attorney later in the webinar, so don't worry. Next, I want to remind you about important surveys we send out as part of attending these trainings. Everyone who registered for this webinar received an email from Leslie Everson saying, in anticipation of the upcoming Basic Steps to Starting a Business in New Mexico event that you have registered for, we would like to collect some preliminary information from you. With this information in hand, we can tailor the course material to better fit your needs. So just by a show of hands, how many of you received the pre-webinar evaluation survey? Sometimes oh, good. Now I got your hands up. Sometimes they go into your junk or your spam. Thank you, guys. So please make sure you do the pre-webinar evaluation, and then you'll receive a post survey. So please do both. We are funded by the Small Business Administration, and it is part of our funding. So we'd, just a little bit giving back for the free webinar, we'd appreciate it. Very good. Now let's talk about starting a business in New Mexico. Before going into business, there are some important considerations you must think about. Will I make enough money to live? Will this replace my current income? Do I need the benefits offered by my current employer? And these are benefits like retirement plans, medical insurance, dental assistance, vision insurance, disability insurance, life insurance, or other important benefits. Can you replace those benefits by starting your business? You must also think about your educational background and skills. Do you have the correct educational background and skills to understand and operate the many facets of a business? This includes bookkeeping, accounting, human resources, supply chain management, sales, and that's just to name a few. If not, you may need to hire somebody to perform these tasks, or you might need to attend more of our webinars or seek training somewhere else. And I'll show you some great free learning opportunities for you. And I'd like to show everybody this Test Your Potential as an Entrepreneur link. This is a document on our website. Fingers crossed that it works today. If not, I'll take you there manually. Ah, my stubborn computer. So let me take you to the website. It's nmsbdc.org, and I'm sure everybody on the line has gone there since you are registered for this webinar. Under starting a business, the option here, I believe they name it How to Tell If I'm an Entrepreneur Test. That's what it's called right there. And let me update that link right now. So you could have it when we do the PDF of the slides. And in this document, it's a questionnaire, and it'll help you and your business advisor, if you choose to work with one, gauge what areas you have a great understanding in and what areas you might need some help in. And these are all the basic traits of an entrepreneur. It goes into myths and misconceptions, identifying startup ideas, feasibility analysis, which is something I enjoy, estimating the cost of startup, something else I enjoy. It gives you a personal budget, so you can make sure that when you're planning out the business, and we do this in a business plan, you were able to cover your personal expenses in addition to the business expenses. Recap of costs, and then of course the article on which this webinar is based, the basic steps to starting a small business. And then it gives you some more ideas. And I'll go over that a little bit with you now in the next few slides. Let's go back to our slideshow. Perfect. I'm very risk adverse, by the way, with that. Test your skills as an entrepreneur. I'm very risk adverse. The best types of businesses for me would probably be medical establishment, something that doesn't have that much. You don't gain as much, but you don't lose as much if there's spikes in the economy. Let's now go through the steps one by one. These slides will be emailed to all attendees, so don't worry about writing down web addresses. In fact, let me show you the follow-up email I'm going to send you. It's right here. And I made sure these links work. It's the links in the slideshow that I have to work on. So all these links are up to date, and they're all the links from the slideshow and more links that I might just talk about but haven't covered in the webinar. Okay. Step one is defining the business. This is the who, what, when, where, and why, and how. And these questions are answered in a business plan, of course. And if you need a business loan, you must provide a business plan to the lender. There's no two ways about it. Many senders use a fill-in-the-blank template, and I'll email that to you in the follow-up email. But there are many options for creating a business plan, like online software such as LivePlan. SBA.gov has a great training with worksheets, and I'll show you that. And we have more tools available at nmsbdc.org. I also want to point you towards the New Mexico Economic Development Department one-stop website for starting a business, gonm.biz. And this webinar is a partnership between a lot of the government agencies you might need to visit when you're starting a business. Here's a link again to the basic steps handout just by itself, not in that packet. And let's go to gonm.biz. I think this is probably about my 15th webinar, and I finally got that email or that web address down. Let's see. There we go. Excuse me, my Zoom controls are blocking the proceed. And I want to show you this website, but I want to show you what's really, really important on this website. All of it's very good, but under business development, the link to NMEDD programs for business. I want to go over some of the programs available to you that I think are underutilized and are very beneficial to you. Let's go over finance development first. And I want to talk to you about LEDA. So LEDA is the Local Economic Development Act. And what the Local Economic Development Act allows the state to do is put aside a pot of money. And they have, I think the last time I was looking at, they had like about $12,000 or $12 million, no, $12 million. And they could put that pot of money aside and they could award it to localities, municipalities in New Mexico, to help develop a small business entering that community that would have a big impact on that community, such as jobs. And really job creation is one of the biggest factors in this. So it's going to have significant community impact. It's basically for rural and underserved areas of New Mexico, but it works across New Mexico. They've given LEDA funds to people in Albuquerque, Las Cruces, across the state. And the goal, again, is job creation with high wages. And these are the industries they're looking for: the manufacturing industry, things in agricultural and mining, because in 2016 we were number 18 in mining across the United States, and economic-based employers. What economic-based employers are their employers that either create or sell a product in New Mexico to other parts of the United States. So most of the money they're bringing into the state of New Mexico is from other places. In New Mexico, we tend to start businesses where we recycle the money inside of New Mexico. Economic-based employers bring it in. Non-qualifying entities. LEDA has loosened their restrictions a little bit. They usually don't fund retail or service businesses, but if they are in a rural and underserved area and they'll make a big job impact in the community, they may consider. I'll let you read the rest of the qualifications, but that's a great program, especially if you want to start something on a little larger scale. The next one I want to talk about is the Collateral Assistance Program. So the Collateral Assistance Program is a program that allows the state of New Mexico to create a bond or whatever it is they need to help you cover the gap in a loan between what you're able to inject as collateral and what the bank requires. So it's a lot like the SBA loan guarantees. So if, say, you need to borrow $300,000, you only have only $250,000 of its collateral back. The Collateral Assistance Program is right for you. And again, they place special preference on women, veterans, and ethnic minorities and other socially disadvantaged groups. And I really don't think they've been taken advantage enough by these groups. So if you're on the line, you qualify, and you're wanting to start something on a little bit of a larger scale, it's going to create jobs in your community, you go for it. The requirements for this program are a little less strict. You don't have to be a manufacturer. You just have to be a small business. And the other one I want to cover with you is opportunity zones. Opportunity zones are zones, and here, the best way for me to explain them is to show you a map. There's our map. I'm going to zoom into central New Mexico since most of us are here from central New Mexico. I always like to give a shout out to my community of Valencia County. You see these areas shaded in orange, and then you see areas shaded in purple. The purple areas are public-private projects such as flood control in the Laguna Pueblo that will create jobs. But the orange zones are for private entrepreneurs who wish to start a business in these areas that are deemed low economic outcomes but high economic possibilities. such as the whole west side of Los Lunas and Belen, where I live. So on the west side of Los Lunas, they have what the Huning and manufacturing industrial complex and the Los Moros industrial area. And in these areas, a lot of people are going and starting manufacturing businesses, and they're using opportunity funds. So it's a fund created by a fund manager who receives money from wealthy individuals or wealthy businesses that have capital gains taxes that they owe to the IRS. If they want to invest those capital gains taxes in an opportunity fund, they could avoid paying capital gains taxes to the IRS for X amount of time, depending on how long they hold that investment. So if you hold an investment for 10 years, you don't have to pay back capital gains until you sell your portion of the business. So if you know somebody who's eager to invest, if you want to approach one of these funds because maybe you want to start a business in one of these areas, I think it's a great way to raise capital without having to go through so much rigmarole. It is a private contract between you and the investor, so you'd have to make that up. It's not it's a kind of a public program, but it doesn't have that bureaucracy that most public programs have. And fund managers are across the United States. We have one that's based in New Mexico, but there are fund managers who manage opportunity funds across the US. There's one in California particularly that wants to invest in agricultural businesses in these opportunity zones. There's very little regulation on what type of business that you need to start in these opportunity zones. It could be retail, it could be service. And I wish more people would take advantage of those opportunity zones. I really do. So let's go back to our slideshow. I'll talk, if you have any questions about JTIP, you could either visit that website, but what JTIP is it's the Job Training Incentive Program. And if you do qualify for LEADA, you most likely qualify for JTIP as well. And I could give you more information about that if you need. Step 2 is choose a business name. There are legal considerations when choosing a business name, and it's very important to find a name that resonates with your target market, looks good on websites, social media, business cards, and other marketing material, is easy to spell and pronounce, and isn't trademarked or copywritten by another business. For example, there was a restaurant in Albuquerque called Dee's Cheesecake Factory. And if you grew up in Albuquerque, this was probably one of your favorite places for lunch or a sweet treat. The owners of Dee's Cheesecake Factory started this business after World War II and trademarked the name in the state of New Mexico. Fast forward to about 2010, 2011, there's a national chain called The Cheesecake Factory that wants to do business in New Mexico. And if you ever go to Coronado Mall, you probably can't resist a piece of cheesecake, or at least I can't. But they could not operate a restaurant under the name Cheesecake Factory because the savvy entrepreneurs at Dee's Cheesecake Factory registered that name or trademarked it in the state of New Mexico many years before. And you could, in this example, a small business had the upper hand, but you could imagine how a small business operating under a trademark business name could end up being sued, have to change their business name, and all that expensive marketing material. And it might actually destroy a new business, in addition to lawsuits. There are two types of trademarks. There's a state and a federal trademark. And the state trademarks are handled, I'm sorry, I didn't go to step 2. There we are. That's better. There's two types of trademarks, the federal trademark and the state trademark. So the first link on the screen, that uspto.gov, is for the federal trademarks, and the second link on the screen, www.sos.state.nm.us, is for state trademarks. You might be wondering, what's the difference? Why would I need one over the other? Well, a federal trademark will cover you across the United States. A state trademark will cover you just in New Mexico. It's important for you to consult with an attorney before making a decision on a business name, because it has legal connotations and we cannot give legal advice. I'll show you some great resources later in the presentation, including the newest member of the SBDC team, the Technology Commercialization Accelerator at New Mexico Tech, staffed by Estefanita Rawlings. And what the Technology Commercialization Accelerator does is they provide free or no cost counseling on patent and trademark. Every time I meet with a client and Estefanita, I'm always amazed by our use of a database and all the trademarks out there. Step 3 is choosing and registering your legal structure. The legal structure of your business is its foundation, and you must carefully consider how you wish to legally operate your business. And this is most, the limited liability companies may or may not provide you with a little bit of liability protection, but for the most part, these are tax decisions you need to make. The common business structures are on the slide. Everything but sole proprietorships must be registered with the New Mexico Secretary of State's office, and the paperwork is available online. It's been available solely online since COVID. More information about legal structures can be found on the document on our website called The Basics of Choosing a Business Entity, and I think this is another document that underwent a name change. Here it is on the follow-up email. So this document was put together by an attorney, and it goes over the law and under which you're governed as an entrepreneur, and the pros and cons of the most common types of business structures. If you need more advice on it, your business advisors could give you a little bit of advice on that. There's also a great webinar on SBA.gov, and I have this in the follow-up email. I just want to show all of you the General Learning Center on SBA.gov because they have a wealth of free learning opportunities. Under Learning Platform here are a list of all their trainings, and they have a regular platform, the Learning Center, and then they have a Cent for Women. So all my women on the call, let's see. I think I have more women on the call than men today. They have a platform just for women entrepreneurs. Men could take it too. I actually took some of it when they were doing the launch, and gender doesn't define a business owner, but it's really an initiative by our former SBA administrator, Mrs. Karazan, to really promote entrepreneurship in women. The regular Learning Center is just as awesome. And they have a bunch of different topics: manage, launch, market, grow. And in each of these topics, they go over different types of information. So the plan, I actually took the planning module as part of my professional development. It's about 20 modules, 20 short videos, 22 actually. And it goes into how to write a business plan. The legal requirements will go into that, licensing, and maybe a little bit into that, what type of business structure should you choose? Young entrepreneurs. I was at least young once, I think. Let's see. Let's go back to our slideshow. And I also put a little sneaky link in here. The B is a link, and it's to B Corps. B Corps are fairly new. And the Taoski Valley is one of the first B Corps in the nation. So we're happy to have them here. And what B Corps are the benefits corporations, or corporations that offer a public benefit and give or provide a benefit of X amount of dollars compared to what they make. So examples of this are Tom's Coffee, Tom's Shoes. Tom's Shoes makes shoes, and then when you buy one, they'll provide a pair of shoes to a child in Africa. A lot of these coffee companies are fair trade, which means they pay a living wage in the areas in which they source their coffee. There's a great place that sells hammocks online. I love hammocks, but those hammocks are almost too pretty to use, and they're created by people in Thailand, and they're paid livable wages in return. And if you're interested in learning more about B Corps, there's a really good attorney who does videos about them, and I could recommend that to you. Let's move on. Okay, now that we're having fun talking about paperwork requirements, let's talk about step 4. To obtain your federal employer identification number, or FEIN, or EIN, as it might be called. This is the unique identification number issued to your business by the IRS and is used on all federal filings. If you're a sole proprietor, your social security number is commonly used instead of an EIN, but sole proprietors could also apply for an EIN. This number is just as important as a social security number, and it should be protected as such. There's actually more fraud that happens with EIN numbers than with social security numbers. And I'm sure everybody on the call right now knows how much fraud happens with social security numbers. No matter what business entity you choose, it's a good idea to obtain this number, and it's required to open up a business bank account at most banks and credit unions. It's also required if you're going to apply for a small business loan. Unless you're a sole proprietor, you could always use your social security number. It's free to apply for that EIN number, and it's available on the IRS website. And if you have a Q&A and you want to go in deeper to that, please let me know. Continuing with our paperwork requirement, step 5 is to register with the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department to obtain a CRS ID. You might be wondering, what's a CRS ID? What is it used for, and why do I need it? Well, it's a unique identifying number used by the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department to record and track your business's collection and payment of gross receipts tax. If gross receipts tax is a new term for you, I'm sure our attendee from Wisconsin, they probably either pay sales tax or another type of tax. New Mexico is one of the only states in the United States that has a gross receipts tax. You might recognize it as the tax you pay whenever you buy goods or services in New Mexico. It's usually around 8% and shows up at the bottom of a receipt. The online registration form is free to complete, but you might want to seek the advice of a CPA when completing the application. You must also file your gross receipts tax reports on a monthly, quarterly, or bi-yearly schedule. Therefore, the department offers a great online training. I can't give you too much insight into gross receipts tax because they recently changed the way that they are tracking and reporting gross receipts tax at the state. In the past, they used, you would self-report. I have to attend one of these webinars just along with everybody else on the call to see what's new. And I did notice last time I went to the store that gross receipts tax has gone up in my area. So the next webinar is going to be when? July 13th. If you are going to start a small business in New Mexico, whether or not you pay gross receipts tax, because if you don't pay gross receipts or don't have to pay gross receipts tax, you still have to file a gross receipts tax report. So take this webinar. The young woman who does the webinar knows more about gross receipts taxes than I ever want to know in my whole life. So take your questions there, and she's happy to answer them. Step 6 is to obtain your local business license and other applicable licenses. When doing business in New Mexico, you need a business license in the municipality or county where you will have a physical presence. For instance, Teofilo's restaurant has a physical presence in Los Lunas, so they get a Village of Los Lunas license. If they had a food truck and did business in Belen or Valencia County, they would have to get a temporary or full business license in Belen or Valencia County. Some of you might be thinking that you'll do business online or in another state. This means getting a business license in any place where you will physically conduct commerce. If you're talking taxes, they usually refer to this as a tax nexus. Each municipality or county has different requirements for obtaining a business license, so check with the municipal or county office or consult an attorney for further advice. And for instance, Rio Communities, which is just south of me here, they ask you to sketch a floor plan of your business, even if you're starting a home-based business out of your spare bedroom. They still want you to sketch that floor plan. And Socorro County doesn't have a formal business licensing process. They just ask that you get a CRS number. And you have to get a CRS or gross receipts tax ID number before you can apply for a business license anywhere in the state. And I noticed recently that they've created tax rates for the pueblos. In the past, pueblos didn't have to pay gross receipts tax. It looks like they're starting to pay gross receipts tax. I'm going to have to learn a little bit more about that, but if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. Step 7 is, let's go to step 7. Step 7 is to report new hires to the New Mexico directory. The link to the directory is on the slide, but this brings human resources considerations into light. Human resources is a very important part of any business and comes with many legal and accounting considerations. You can always have an accountant or an attorney. You could always contact an accountant or attorney for specific information, but I included links to 2 good resources for learning more about employment procedures and laws. The first one, so here's that link to the new hire directory. Pretty dry, easy thing to do. The second link is for Comply Right. They do sponsor the America Small Business Development Center conference, and they offer our clients a wealth of free resources. They have e-guides, tip sheets, videos, on things such as, let's see, termination tutorial, 5 crucial factors to consider before firing. And of course, they sell canned or all-in-one solutions for human resources, but you don't have to buy their products to get the free information. And they have a staff of attorneys that work for them, so the information they have is usually very up to date, and it's usually covers the law as it should be covered. The second link on the screen is for the EEOC.gov's Small Business Guide. So the EEOC stands for the Equal Employer Opportunity Commission. And if you ever have an employee who feels that they're discriminated by you against one of the protected classes, race, creed, color, gender, national origin, and I'm missing one, my human resource professor would be so mad. They would go to the EEOC and complain. And then the EEOC would investigate, and then they usually issue a right to sue letter. And if you get a right to sue letter, I think that means bad news for everybody involved. So it's best that you know what the EEOC expects from you as a business owner before you go into business. Take a look at the small business requirements and the tips for small businesses. It's well worth your time to read those. Okay. Keeping with the HR trend, step 8 is if you have employees, you may need to complete form ES 802. This is a required form from the New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions or Connections. And the Department of Workforce Solutions has many services, tax credits, and learning opportunities for small business owners. So I included their business outreach link as well. So here's that link to the form. Here's the link to their business outreach center. Some common services that the Department of Workforce Solutions offers are job posting, pre-employment screenings, typing tests, etc. And in some cases, they provide space to conduct interviews. Other things that the Department of Workforce Solutions does is they offer bonds for people who you might want to hire, but they might have a checkered past. Say you want to hire a bookkeeper, but they might have an embezzlement charge way in their past. You could apply for a bond and they give you like a $50,000 bond in case anything happened. If you hire people with disabilities, if you hire people, veterans, or if you hire people from other underserved communities, they do offer tax credits. Let's see, what's another one? If you want to hire somebody for your business and it's one of the businesses they identify as a high need, so let's say truck driver. If you have a trucking company, you want to hire a truck driver, you don't have any, and you have somebody in mind, they don't have their CDL, and if they fall into the group that qualifies for this program, they could get WIOA funds, and that will allow them to get their CDL certification on the Department of Workforce Solutions dime. Then you can employ them. So those are some of the great programs available that I think are underused in the community. The job postings is the main one from the Department of Workforce Solutions. And if you have a job that you need to fill, posting them at the Department of Workforce Solutions will put your job all over the web. And it's free. Step 9 is if you have employees, seek the assistance of an accountant. You can see all the tax acronyms on the slide: FUTA, SUTA, FIT, SIT, FICA. Oof. Um, and if you aren't willing or able to deal with them, please seek the advice of a bookkeeper and accountant. The IRS website also has a wealth of information on your federal tax obligations, and I included that link in my follow-up email and on the slides. So here's the small business taxes workshop. If you are new into business, take the first 4 lessons. They'll be well worth your time. If you're going to have employees, take all 8. I think that's a great investment of your time, and it's a must for those wanting to start a small business. They also have the IRS self-employed and small business tax center, and I included that link in the follow-up email. It's right here. Remember, I told you that EINs are offered. You could apply for one for free from the IRS. Here is more information about it. If you're self-employed, they have a lot of information for you. Most of the people who get into tax trouble are either self-employed or participating in what they call the gig economy, which is things like ride share, renting out your house on one of those sites like Airbnb, or maybe grocery pickup. I've seen those. They call that the gig or sharing economy. Those people who participate in that often get themselves into a tax bind, and they have other great educational tools. And any form you'll need. I know everybody who comes into my office, do you have this form from the IRS? Do you have that form from the IRS? They're all available online. And if you need a particular one, they're usually available on this particular site. So keep this site bookmarked on your computer and make sure you take advantage of it. Okay, let's move on. We're almost there. We have 13 steps. Step 10 is to seek the assistance of an attorney. And we talked about the important legal landmines in starting a business and operating a business. And attorneys are licensed to answer these questions. For patents and trademarks, there are 2 resources, the New Mexico Technology Commercialization Accelerator and the NMSU Patent and Trademark Center. The 2 links I have here are for the bar. So the New Mexico bar, and I know the links are correct in the follow-up email. Let's go to the follow-up email. It's SB. statebarnewmexico.org, sbnm.org. And the State Bar has 2 resources for people seeking an attorney. So under For the Public, they have I Need a Lawyer, and they have the State Bar General Referral Program, where you pay the State Bar X amount of money, I think it's $35, and they'll connect you with an attorney for a 30-minute consultation. If you don't want to go through the process or you're in a panic, that's a great resource for you. And then they have the online bar directory. So say, and remember, we're in New Mexico, so a lot of New Mexico is rural and underserved. You might have to go to the largest county near you to find an attorney who practices in an area. But I like to go to practice areas. The areas of law that you might need as a business owner are business and corporations, intellectual property for patents and trademarks, labor and employment, and those are just a few selections, but those are the main ones you need as a business owner. And then I like to sort by county. You could go by state, city. You could search for a particular attorney if you wanted to. Let's do Valencia County. I don't believe we'll have very many. Oh, good. We have quite a few. So these are the attorneys that practice in those practice areas. And if you click one, I'll click one on random. Their profile has their name, their business location, their business address, their phone number, and an email address. So if you're looking for a specific type of attorney, that's a great way to do it. I want to show you the New Mexico Technology Commercialization Accelerator. They recently got a website. And that's staffed by Stefanita Rawlings, and she provides that no-cost assistance with patents and trademarks. And it's stationed at New Mexico Tech, and we hope to see it at the New Senda Credit Union soon. And then the NMSU, New Mexico State University, has the patent and trademark, but they get a grant for the Patent and Trademark Resource Center for the entire state. So no matter where you're located, what college you went to, take advantage of that resource. It looks like I search for that often. And David Irvin is the librarian there. He's the patent and trademark librarian. They can't give you legal advice, but they could help you find the information you need on these large patent and trademark databases. And if you were to hire an attorney, they would have to do that research themselves. And you know, time is money with an attorney. It could save you some money if you're trying to pursue a trademark or a patent or a copyright. And guess what? And it's free. Let's return to our slides. I gave you a sneak peek, everybody. Okay. Oof. There we go. Let's move on to step 11. Step 11 is to review the guidelines for compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is another legal landmine for small businesses and should be carefully considered. And they have many resources on their website. So let's go to their website. And they have a small business primer for small business. A lot of people make their living suing small businesses based on ADA compliance. You want to avoid any sort of non-compliance as much as possible, especially if you have employees or you have a storefront. So make sure to read that primer before you go into business. It's well worth your time. Perfect. Step 12 is to establish a business bank account. It's best practice to keep your personal and business finances separate, and this makes your bookkeeping process easier and will help you if your business ever experiences an audit. A lot of people think there's just an audit from the IRS. There's also a gross receipts tax audit and a state tax audit. So be careful. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or the FDIC, has a great learning module for small business owners called the FDIC Money Smart for Small Business. This was kind of community service when the big banks were bailed out back in 2008. The FDIC was granted money to create this wonderful curriculum. And if there's only one module that you decide to take the banking services module, because banking services for small business are different than banking services for regular customers. So make sure you know the difference, make sure you're not taken advantage of by a bank, and make sure you know what to expect when seeking a small business loan. I would take the whole module if I were really good. And now we're at the home stretch. We're at lucky step number 13. Our final step 13 is to have adequate business insurance coverage. This slide shows the common types of insurance coverage, and I recommend you research your options with an independent insurance broker. Oftentimes, independent insurance brokers sell insurances from many different companies, and they tend to be less biased. You could learn more about business insurance by visiting the link on the slide. It's for the Hitchcock's Insurance Company's blog. Hitchcock's Insurance is one of the largest small business insurers in the nation, and they sponsor the America Small Business Development Conference. And they offer this page of learning resources about business insurance just for the SBDC clients. So they have 3 videos. They're well worth your time to take. And just understanding the different types of insurances available to business is very important. Because if you go to an insurance broker and they're less than scrupulous, they might give you way more insurance than you need, or they might not give you enough. So it's best to have a basic understanding of the different types of small business insurance. Perfect. Okay. Let's just take a little break so we could look at the Q&A. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. I raised my hand instead of looking at the chat, but I don't see anything in the chat. I'll give everybody a minute, maybe. I see there's an attendee with their hand raised. Claire, if you have a question, I'm going to allow you to speak before we get into our research tools. Go ahead. You are now muted, but able to speak.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if you have help with writing grants.
There aren't very many. Okay, perfect. Let me put you on mute real fast and then I'll answer that. There aren't many grants for small businesses, and the Small Business Development Center is predominantly available to small business owners, but they could help non-for-profits that serve a need of the business community. So chambers of commerce, there's the Middle Rio Grande Economic Development Association. And I don't have the expertise for writing grants, but there may be somebody near you who has that expertise. So I'm going to open that up as a possibility, Claire, but it's not something that the SBDC focuses on. And then Jim says, can we get a copy of these slides? Yep, I will send you a copy of these slides in that follow-up email. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about our research tools. I love our research tools. We have some of the best research tools. Let's see. I want to share with you some research tools that we use to gain insights into industry analysis, market research, demographics, and traffic counts. These data tools are very, very important to the success of your business and will help you fill in the questions on our business plan template. And of course, make informed decisions and plan for the future. Your business is a big investment, so treat it as such. The first 4 links are free, and then I'll talk to you about the paid databases that the SBDC has access to and you have access to through the SBDC as clients. The first link is a great 30-minute webinar from the SBA's website on how to write a business plan. They also provide great worksheets and examples of financial projections. The second link is for bplans.com by Palo Alto Software. Again, that's that software that does live plan. This website provides you with numerous business plan examples, and they used to charge like an absurd amount of money for a disc with all of these back in the old technology days. And now they offer them all for free on bplans.com. The third link is for Census Business Builder. This is a no-cost database that allows you to find demographic information, census stats, and estimates of yearly household expenditures in a certain area, county, census tract, and I'll demonstrate that one for you. And the last link is for the Middle Rio Grande Council of Governments Interactive Traffic Counts Map. That is only going to be good for this Albuquerque metro area, but they do keep traffic data throughout the state, and the COG near you will be able to provide you with that. So before I go into IBIS World, Reference USA, and Demographics Now, let me go over Census Business Builder because it's free to you. And I think it's one of the best databases around for business research. So if you go to the link, or you could just Google Census Business Builder, which I often do, always go to the census.gov web address. They have 2 versions, the Small Business Edition and the Regional Analyst Edition. If you are in an urban area, Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Las Cruces, Farmington, the Regional Analyst Edition might be helpful for you. For most of New Mexico, the Small Business Edition is just good enough. So the data in this database is organized by NIAC or NAICS code. If you don't know your NAICS code, ask your business advisor because we have to put in a NAICS code when we do your client record. if you have if you want to start or have one of the common types of businesses, we're going to use fast food in this example. They have the quick links right there. So in this section, you could type in whatever area you want information about. So this could be Valencia County. And it's a finicky little database, so be careful with it, but it's great information when you're able to get to it. You have to wait for it to load. You could do Valencia County. I could do Los Lunas, New Mexico, the village of Los Lunas. I could do the state of New Mexico, or I could do a zip code 87031, which happens to be Los Lunas. Well, to use the zip code as an example, and remember, zip codes will cover, so the village of Los Lunas proper is a smaller area than the zip code of 87031 because it includes unincorporated areas of Valencia County. And you could go to a map and you could explore these stats, but I'm more of a read it and learn type of person. So I like to go straight to the report. I'm very proud of the internet today. It's working very fast compared to how it has been working during our presentation. And just when I said that, we started to slow down. Maybe if I close all these links I have open, it might work faster. So one of the main things we should learn by this is have patience with Census Business Builder. And I promise you the information you get will be good. While we wait for the report to load, I'm going to look in the Q&A. I don't see anything in the Q&A. I am going to stop sharing real fast, see if that helps the report. And it didn't. So while we wait for Census Business Builder to load, let's look at the pay databases that offer great advice. And if you do anything as a SBDC client, get with your advisor and get one of these reports. I access them through the UNM library. And if anybody is a UNM student on the call today, they could access them as well. And there's a wealth of other databases available to you as well. IBIS World is my favorite of all the resource tools we have access to. And let's use restaurants as an example. Single location full service restaurants. And I want to show you what one of these reports looks like and why it would be so valuable to you. To do that, I like to go into the full PDF of the full report. and I'll cover the high points with you. So the first part of this report I find most helpful are the key external or key economic drivers of the business. If you're going into this business and you're risk adverse like me, a business that's driven by consumer spending might not be the business for you. So what drives the restaurant business? Consumer spending, consumer confidence index, which is a fancy way of saying how people view the future of the economy, healthy eating index, households earning more than $100,000, and an urban population. This next page tells you which of the drivers are growing, declining, or staying the same. It looks like we have a pretty good outlook between 2016 and 2021. Sometimes they venture, this is a bigger industry, so they'll venture a guess at what the industry is going to do over the next couple of years. So we have until 2026. It looks like this restaurant industry is going to stay stagnant. It looks like profit in that industry is going to rise. The profit margin is 4%. So when I see a low profit margin, this means 4 cents out of every dollar goes into the business's profit. That means you're working in quantity. You're a small manufacturing facility. It looks like it's going to grow up, maybe up slightly or to where it was before the pandemic. The number of businesses looks like it's going to stay about the same, grow 2.2%. Employment looks like it's going to grow slightly, and so do wages. Next part of this report tells you what are the products and services most popular in this industry across the United States. And let's see what type of food wins. Asian restaurants followed by US restaurants. So I'm guessing we like our Asian food and our hamburgers. It gives you a SWOT analysis, what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in this industry. It gives you an example of the performance of this industry over the years. So these are the indicators: consumer spending, consumer confidence, and then revenue in that industry. And you could see the years that consumer confidence is high, I don't know, the spending seems to be low. It seems to follow it follows that consumer spending very closely. Consumer confidence is all over the place. And it looks like what they're predicting, I don't know if you follow the news a lot, but you hear about the V-shaped recovery. That means before COVID-19, we were steady. We went way down during COVID-19 because of the restrictions. Restaurants had to close. They had to limit capacity. And they're predicting that, say in this year and maybe next year, that the revenue in restaurants is going to go up. Consumer spending is predicted to go up. Let's see what else I want to show you here. This is where your industry is located in the business life cycle. There's quantity growth, quality growth. A lot of businesses now post-pandemic are in the quantity growth. More are going to pop up. This business happens to be in the quality growth. So this shows me that it's a great time to enter that industry. Good investment of probably my time and money. Businesses in the maturity segment are those in business for 8 years or longer. So you're competing with established businesses in mature markets. And those in the decline, think coffee shops, Kinkos, those are industries that are going to have more businesses closed than open over a period of time. So just thinking about that, I can't give you the definitive answer, but thinking about that, what industry, in what segment would you want to invest money in? And for me, that would probably be quality growth. There's the product and service segmentation again. Asian restaurants and US restaurants, most popular across the US. And here are your major markets. If you're wondering who your target markets are and what demographic you should be spending your marketing dollars on, this will give you great insights into that. Since it's driven by households earning more than 100,000, maybe you want to do a postcard mailing to those households in your area making 100,000 or more. Maybe you want to target them on social media. I could help you with that. And then one other part of this report I find most helpful, and that's the cost structures. So when we're doing financial projections for your business, you're like, where do I start? I think I'm going to make $2 million. I'd probably put you in perspective and say you should be spending X amount on wages, X amount on purchases, yeah, and your profit is just that little sliver right there in the whole scheme of things. So this could really help you project those expenses and costs for a business and help maybe put your idea in perspective. So that's what I wanted to go over with you with IBIS. Let's see if Census Business Builder has decided to, let's try it again. Let's go from the beginning. How embarrassing for you, small business builder. Census Business Builder. Okay, well that loads. I'm going to go into the next one. Next database I find really helpful, which is Reference USA. They've changed their name recently to Data Excel. Same database, just new name. And what they do is they help me with research and they help you with research. So say if you wanted to find, you want to open up a restaurant in a certain area, you want to know who your competitors are. We could find, say, keyword restaurants. In a certain zip code, in a city, state, we could do a map-based search. So say you wanted to know who you're competing with against in a 5-mile radius, we could look that sort of thing up. So let's give you an example with metro area, New Mexico, Albuquerque. So there are 1,812 restaurants in the Albuquerque metro area. You could start to see maybe from this data, you could pull all the restaurants. You could see what kind of restaurants are there not a lot of in Albuquerque. Where are most of the restaurants? So we could view them on a map. I'm guessing they're going to be in the uptown, downtown area. And it lists them by zip code. So at 8703, there's a lot of restaurants, 60 results in most of this. 87121 Northeast Heights, 91, 87124 Southeast Northeast Heights right there, 104, 87109, that's Northeast Heights, 164. You could start to see the trends in that industry, where these businesses are located, how many are located in what zip code, and that's very valuable information when starting a business. If you are a business that serves other businesses, so say you make bolts or screens and you sell those to tool stores and to industries, home builders, you'd sell them directly to home builders. I could find you a list of all the home builders in a certain area and you could contact them. They give you names and addresses. The businesses you could call, they do the same thing for consumers, but you cannot call them or email them unless you buy their information from the database. But you could mail them. So if you ever wanted to do a postcard mailing, say we want to target those people in those households in 87031 with estimated household incomes of $100,000 or more, because we are starting a new restaurant. We want to send all of these people a coupon for a free drink, and we just know they're going to come in and buy all sorts of stuff. There are 7,573 residents that meet this criteria. See, I get their names, addresses. I would only want to send one postcard per. And if you were to pull one of these lists from, say, Vistaprint, you could buy the lists from Vistaprint and do a postcard mailing, or you could get them from me for free and just pay for the postcards. Up to you. And let's see if Census Business Builders decided to behave. It's not behaving today. If you ever want Census Business Builder information, email me, email Leslie, and we'll connect you with somebody who could help, or maybe I can meet with you. It's great data, and it gives a lot of information about household expenditures per household per year. So say in this zip code, if we looked at food, lunch eaten away from the home, it would give us an expenditure per household. So that's around $1,500 a year. The average household spends on eating out. And I think that's the most helpful data from that database. I'm not going to go into demographics now because to be honest with you, I don't know that database that well. And I like Census Builder much better. Let's go back to our slides. Since this is a COVID-sponsored workshop, I wanted to give you the links for the most legitimate and up-to-date sources of information regarding COVID-19 assistance. They are on this slide. They are the most up-to-date and legitimate sources I could find. The most important one out of all these is probably what you should know about COVID-19, the ADA, the Rehabilitation Act, and other EEO laws. So if you're an employer and you want to know how COVID-19 has affected these laws, can you ask somebody if they've had COVID? Can you require somebody to get a COVID-19 vaccine? That information will be answered for you there. And then newmexico.gov, of course, has all the latest information regarding COVID-19. Perfect. How we measure success together. Now that we talked about how we can help you, this is how you can help the SBDC. As part of offering our services, we need your help to ensure our services are around for many more years. So we ask that you participate in our surveys, report economic impacts because of our assistance to your advisor, and write a letter of support to your local legislator about your experience with the SBDC. All information is kept confidential and is only reported in aggregate to our funders, the state of New Mexico, and the Small Business Administration. And at the end of the slides, I put some contact information for some of the common programs. This slide provides contact information for the SBDC programs under our umbrella. So the first one's PTAC, or the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, the IBA, or the International Business Accelerator, and the New Mexico Tech TCA. The Procurement Technical Assistance Center is a government-funded program providing assistance to small businesses who want to sell their goods or services to the government, educational institutions, or tribal entities. The International Business Accelerator is a one-stop shop of resources for New Mexico businesses and individuals wishing to introduce their product or service into the global market. And if you want data, Josh, my counterpart over there at the IBA, is a whiz with that trade data. And then the New Mexico Technology Commercialization Accelerator, of course, offers no-cost confidential counseling regarding intellectual property. Let's go on, because I want to leave at least 10 minutes to answer questions. This slide continues the list of small business resource partners, SCORE, or the Service Corps of Retired Executives, WEST, otherwise known as the Women's Business Center Program, and then VBOC, which is the Veterans Business Outreach Center. And the highlight of what VBOC does is they offer a training, it's like a small MBA for veterans called From Boots to Business, and they do a really good job. And our SBA State Director, John Garcia, he's a veteran, and he feels very strongly for supporting veterans. Here is the contact information for your small business support team. We are funded by the Small Business Administration, and many people ask about SBA loans. So here's a link to the latest SBA resource guide. They used to publish these, and I'm expecting a box at the office when we return in August. But it's available online to everybody, and this is probably the best way to save paper. On page 27 of this magazine are all the SBA lenders. So these are all the people, the banks or lending institutions that participate in SBA guaranteed loans. The SBA does not lend directly, and they haven't lent directly until the EIDL loans that you might have heard of, or the PPP loans. So what an SBA loan is, and if you go to the end of all the lenders, they have a sheet that tells you the different types of SBA loans. Basically, the federal government provides a guarantee to a bank to give you a loan. So indeed, it's like rich Uncle Sam co-signing a loan for you. It's not a direct loan. And if you're a new business start, a lot of the banks especially now in these uncertain economic times, don't want to fund a startup business. So if you're in New Mexico, you might want to take advantage of the Community Advantage Lender or the participating micro lenders. West, the Women's Business Center, for both men and women, you're welcome to West. They do give out loans, and they were just having a 30-year anniversary where they're giving out 3% loans. The loan fund, I work closely with the loan fund. The CEO is on our board, our advisory board, Leroy Pacheco. He has helped numerous people throughout the state get loans that would not be considered by a bank. And then DreamSpring, they are a multi-state organization. They serve Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas, I believe, here at their center. And they are closely related to the loan fund in that they give loans to people who might not qualify for a loan at a traditional lender. They also work with people who have blemished credit, as long as you have that collateral backing. And they do more than just SBA loans. These micro lenders and community advantage lenders have private and public money from other sources, so that if you are looking for something other than an SBA loan, because they do come with certain requirements, they're kind of like student loans, you could consider them as well. Perfect. And then, of course, at the bottom of that's the New Mexico Economic Development Department, and we went over some of those programs I urge you guys to take advantage of. And this concludes our slideshow. I'll now answer questions in the Q&A. Let's see here. Will I receive information to register for webinars from other parties? I'm guessing if you registered for this webinar, no, we're not allowed to share your information with any other parties unless you check that box when you signed up as a client that says you could receive a survey from the Small Business Administration. But no, you won't be prompted or spammed in your email, except by Leslie and I with our webinars. Thomas asks, what are the licensing rules around tourism businesses? For example, if a business is based in Santa Fe but runs tours through the Taos area, would it need to be licensed in both towns? I'm sure if you went to the municipality, Thomas, they would tell you yes. But as a rule of thumb, it's wherever you have a physical location. So if you had a building in Santa Fe and you did tours to Taos, people paid you in Santa Fe, that's where you're conducting business in Santa Fe. If you were a food truck that had a physical location in Santa Fe, but 2 days a week you worked in Taos, you would have to get that vendor permit in Taos. A rule of thumb is if you have a business address in that place, so if you had a business address in both Santa Fe and Taos, you would have to get a registration in both. If you have a formal business address just in Santa Fe, that's where you get that business license. There's also gross receipts tax connotations that come with businesses that go across county or municipal lines. Take your questions to the gross receipts tax webinar. That young woman knows more about gross receipts taxes than anybody I could think of. I think she knows more about them than even accountants do. So it's not just a licensing requirement, it's a tax requirement. So make sure, Thomas, you take those questions to the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department and go by the rule of thumb wherever you have that business address. Get a business license. How much does an IBIS World cost? Jim asks, how much does an IBIS World report cost typically? They're upwards of $800. So if you were to buy one of those reports from IBIS World, you'd pay between $800 and probably $2,000 for a report. And they are really up to date. Most of them are from April of this year. Some of them are from July. And they're not venturing to go into the future very much. They used to in the past. They would go out maybe 4 or 5 years in the future. They're a little bit more conservative these days. But if I was going to invest money in a stock or a bond, especially a small business, I would want to know what the industry is going to do, what it's doing now, and what it's predicted to do over the next few years. Thank you for those questions. I'm going to, the Q&A is still open. Okay, let's see. Jim asks, can we get the IBIS reports through you for free? Yes, as long as you're an SBDC client, IBIS World reports are available to you for free. The data in Data Excel or Reference USA is available to you for free. And except if you want to call or email a list of residential clients, then you have to purchase that list, or you can mail them for free. And the information through Demographics Now and of course Census Business Builder is available to you for free. Thanks for asking that, Jim. The Q&A is still open. I allowed you guys 10 minutes. If we want to take a little breather, you're welcome to do so. In fact, Leslie, are you there?
I am here.
Do you have anything you want to talk about or any workshops you want to announce just for a minute or two, just to give them a break from me?
I never need a break from you, but I do want to tell everyone that the New Mexico Small Business Development Center wants to encourage all New Mexico small businesses to understand the importance of learning about cybersecurity. We want you to protect your data, especially from ransomware. I know that you found this webinar today on our website at nmsbdc.org. What we do is once this webinar is complete, we put it up on our website under the On Demand tab. So you can also register and re-watch it or any of our other webinars on demand for up to 7 days after the webinar. Then what we do is we post it to our YouTube page, and let me get everyone our link to the YouTube, because you can go to that page anytime. You can just click on the link and pick up the link, but you can go anytime and pick up our webinars that we have done after they leave the website. They go to YouTube, and if anybody has a spare moment with trying to start a business, it's available at any time. So let me get that link and I will send that over to everybody, because I know the YouTube, you're probably going to get tired of me presenting them, because I do present quite a few of them, but they are available.
No, that's a great thing to bring up. Thank you, Leslie. No, we don't get tired of you. You're the hostess, the webinar hostess with the mostest.
Oh, well, thank you.
And we have an attorney who did many webinars about legal connotations of owning a business. He continues to do them. And then we have a lot of great information about taxes too that we can't normally provide you as advisors. And I see that in the chat.
Yes, there's lots of, that's the YouTube page link. You just click on that and you can add it into your browser. And we have stuff on marketing. We have stuff on all kinds of e-commerce and how to get the most from your website, your social media, all kinds of different information for your business. So like I said in the beginning, this month we have well over 30 webinars for you guys to hopefully get information that you need.
The man who does our marketing webinars, Eric Spellman, he's a hoot and a half. Let me tell you, you did really enjoy those, and he gives great information.
He does. We just completed one yesterday on your search, Google searches, and boy, I tell you, about claiming your business. And he did bring up the fact is that first of all, it's free, and secondly, the Small Business Development Center has a kind of a partnership with Google that they can actually help you at your local center get your business up online, which is a great resource for anyone that's starting a business.
Oh, that's a great point. Since we don't have anything in the Q&A, Leslie, I think I'll take them to that website, the Google My Business website.
I think so. That was the one we did yesterday, and it's just, you know, talking about someone that had a tourist business up through Taos and Santa Fe. If you want people to find you, this is a great first step to getting your business up on maps.
So there are two great things about Google My Business. If you are a single member home-based small business, they offer you, of course, you could claim your business profile because Google wants the most up-to-date information for their visitors, but they also give you a free website. So I'll use an example. I worked with one of the clients on it. They're great for people who are artists and maybe don't have a physical location where they sell their work, such as this person, or for those who are maybe single member LLCs that do something maybe like bookkeeping. And this website is available to free. It's very rudimentary. You can't mess around with it too much. They only have about 6 or 7 themes available, and that has to do with the colors and the fonts. We could help you create the photo sizes that match these templates. And it's just a great thing for those single member small businesses. You could choose how you want to be contacted, get a quote. You could also buy a URL. This business doesn't have a URL. It's just the artist name.business.site. You could buy one if you wanted to that was businessname.com. It's $12 a year. If you are a larger business, you have a storefront. Let me show you what it does for you as a storefront. So let's do, hopefully I'm not signed in. Okay. And I'm jealous. Vernon always gets the top photo. I used to have the top photo. So let's see here. This is basically what you're claiming, and it's in the right-hand side of the screen. It's what people see when they Google your business, and it pops up on their phone or their screen. You could collect your Google reviews and respond to them. If you have a website already, you could link it. If you want to create one of the free Google websites, you're more than welcome to. It displays your reviews, and it also picks up reviews from Facebook. And then at the bottom, it allows you to put what they call posts. So if, say, I wanted to promote something for my business, I wanted to put a special update like I used to put when we were closed for winter vacation, I could put that there. If I was having a sale, I could put a coupon code. There's a whole lot of things you could do with Google My Business. Let me see if I could get into mine. And I'll just show you some of the cool insights you get with Google My Business. So of course, we'd all love to know how many people are searching for us a month. Maybe if we did a post, how many people are resonating with that post in our area? How many people are searching for us just by SBDC? How many people are searching for us by Small Business Development Center? And that's the kind of data you could collect from Google. Of course, they want to sell you keywords, what they call keywords or Google ads. So if I were to type in, say, shoes, oh, I'm not seeing any ads today. Oh, here are the ads. If you ever want to look for an ad, look at something advertised to the women. They always have ads for that. So here are some of these people bought keywords. So when I typed in women's shoes, Christian Louis Vuitton paid for a keyword. Firebird Mabel paid for a keyword. Toe ring, buckled O-ring, or whatever that is. Chic Me, I guess. Zappos always pays for an ad. I think anytime I search for shoes, they come up first. And then all the searches below are what they call organic searches. So those are searches that appear in Google because Google deemed them to be relevant to that search term. If you don't feel like you're relevant, Google doesn't feel like you're relevant, then maybe taking out an ad is right for you. Let's see what other things that Google tells us. They tells us how many people called you based on your profile, how many requested directions, and how many visited your website. You could look at directions requests for month, quarter, week, phone calls for the same thing. Popular times, which isn't available right now because we haven't been open physically for about a year and a half. We could see which photos are being viewed when. So if we say we posted maybe a new photo of a product, we could see when that was viewed and how many people viewed it. And then customers could post photos and then people could rate them. That's Google My Business in a nutshell. And I thank you, Leslie, for bringing that up, because that's one of the things I say, if you do nothing else in my marketing workshop, it's to claim your Google My Business page.
I agree. I think it's very important, and all your links. And I know people are always anxious, but you will be getting a follow-up email with the links that everyone needs.
And I don't see anything in the Q&A. It's 1 o'clock. I thank you, Leslie, for being a great hostess. I thank you all for spending time with me today. And I'll say goodbye for now.
Okay. See you later.
Bye. See you.
Bye.